Did you know that your daily grind, specifically working 55 hours a week, is actively increasing your stroke risk by a massive 35%?
Right. It's an incredible statistic.
Or consider this, that chronic, lingering feeling of loneliness you might just brush off when you get home to an empty apartment. Well, it's inflicting the exact same level of physiological damage on your body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Yeah, it's a staggering reality to confront
It really is.
because we're basically functioning inside a modern architecture that is quietly dismantling our health, and yet, we've been deeply conditioned to just smile, adapt, and ask for more.
So welcome to the MindWire podcast. Today we are doing a deep dive into the silent killers of modernity.
Exactly.
We're unpacking how society has fundamentally tricked us. We're going to explore how behaviors we actively celebrate, like hustle culture, endless connectivity, and this relentless positivity are secretly destroying our health, our brains, and our relationships.
It's all about finding out why our modern environment has become so profoundly misaligned with our actual biology.
Right. But before we jump into the deep end here, I
Yep.
just want to warmly invite you, our listener, to join this community. If you want to understand the world better, please subscribe to the MindWire podcast on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely hit that notification bell so you never miss a deep dive.
And drop a like on the video to support the channel.
Yeah.
It really helps us keep bringing you these deep explorations into the hidden forces that shape our lives.
We really rely on that community support to keep digging into the mechanisms that actually dictate your everyday well-being.
Absolutely. So I was recently reading the work of philosopher Byung-Chul Han, and he frames this modern trap just brilliantly.
His work is fascinating.
Right. We all know the whole concept of the hustle, like those motivational quotes at 5 in the morning, treating skipped lunches like some sort of badge of honor.
Yeah, the whole grind set mentality.
Exactly. Well, Han argues we've undergone this massive paradigm shift. We've moved from what he calls a disciplinary society to a neuronal society of auto-exploitation.
Right. So in a disciplinary society, you can think of the early industrial revolution.
Okay.
The rules and the coercion were entirely external. The pressure was, well, a literal factory boss telling you, you must not do this or you must work these hours.
So the oppression came from the outside.
Exactly. But Han points out that in our modern neuronal society, that driving mantra has shifted to you can do anything.
Right.
We have basically become entrepreneurs of ourselves.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like we fired the evil factory boss from the Industrial Revolution, but then we just rehired him to live permanently inside our own heads.
That is exactly it.
And because he's in our heads, there's no physical whistleblower to tell us our shift is over. Right. We willingly push our own performance until we reach a point of total physiological collapse.
Right. We operate under this illusion of absolute freedom, but it's actually just a state of auto-exploitation.
Wow.
Because there are no clear external boundaries telling us to clock out, the basic human necessity for rest, or even just quiet contemplation, is reframed as a moral failure.
You literally feel guilty just sitting still.
Exactly. And the physical cost of that internal boss is catastrophic.
Yeah, let's talk about the data on that, because there was a massive 2021 study from the World Health Organization and the International Labor Organization that looked at this.
Right, the overwork study.
Yeah, in a single year, overwork, which they categorize as working 55 hours or more a week, killed 735,000 people globally from strokes and ischemic heart disease.
It's just wild.
It is. And yet we have a hustle culture that unironically treats sleep deprivation as a virtue. People love to say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. But wait, we just drink caffeine and catch up on sleep over the weekend.
Yeah.
Well, what's fascinating here is that phrase operates as a literal biological self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We tend to view our energy reserves like a bank account, right? We assume we can run a deficit Monday through Friday, drink a ton of caffeine, and then pay back that so-called debt of rest by sleeping in on Saturday.
But the body doesn't work like that.
No, the human nervous system does not possess a ledger. When you chronically restrict your sleep to under 6 hours, you are physically locking your autonomic nervous system into a continuous fight-or-flight state.
Meaning your body thinks it's constantly under attack by a predator, even if you're literally just answering emails on your couch.
Exactly. Your adrenal glands are just flooding your system with cortisol. By pushing past those biological limits every day, you prevent your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest network, from ever fully engaging. You cannot undo 5 days of systemic inflammation with one lazy Saturday.
That is terrifying.
It is. This chronic cortisol exposure leads to severe cognitive fog, emotional volatility, and a structural suppression of your white blood cells.
So it just leaves your immune system completely compromised. So we end up trapped with this internal boss. We're completely exhausted. Our immune systems are crashing. But instead of actually resting or, I don't know, going for a walk, we try to numb the exhaustion.
Right, we turn to our screens.
Exactly. And this is where Shoshana Zuboff's research on surveillance capitalism comes in. We aren't just using tools to relax anymore. We're stepping into an environment engineered to extract our attention.
Yeah, Zuboff calls this digital architecture the big other.
The big other.
Right. These platforms are built using highly sophisticated psychological triggers designed specifically to exploit our dopamine loops.
So the goal isn't just to sell you a product anymore.
No, not at all. It is to modify your behavior to keep you scrolling, purely to generate data and ad revenue.
And it fragments our attention to the point where brain rot was literally named the Oxford Word of the Year for 2024.
That is a perfect indicator of where we're at.
It really is. The constant context switching destroys our ability to consolidate memories or engage in deep analytical thought. But there's a vital distinction researchers make here between standard dopamine scrolling and doom scrolling.
Yes. Dopamine scrolling is just mindlessly looking at entertaining videos to numb out.
Right.
But doom scrolling is much darker. It weaponizes something deeply primal, which is our evolutionary negativity bias.
Or negativity bias.
And hundreds of thousands of years ago, human survival depended on paying disproportionate attention to threats. If you ignored a beautiful sunset, nothing happened.
Right.
But if you ignored a rustling bush, you were eaten. We are biologically hardwired to fixate on danger.
So the algorithms underlying our social feeds are just optimized for engagement, and nothing drives engagement quite like fear, disgust, and anger.
Exactly. It creates this incredibly vicious feedback loop.
And there are recent studies, right, involving university students in the U.S. and Iran, showing that chronic doom scrolling causes profound existential anxiety.
Yes, and it fosters a fundamentally misanthropic worldview. People begin to internalize this curated feed of global catastrophes as the baseline reality of human nature.
You just start to believe humanity is entirely broken.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Joanne Orlando, a researcher who studies our relationship with tech, she actually describes doom scrolling as being in a room where people yell at you continually.
That is a brilliant analogy.
But it makes me wonder, if our brains genuinely hate the yelling room, why can't we just put the phone down? Is this some sort of evolutionary glitch? Like our primitive brain thinks staring at the threat is keeping us safe?
That is precisely the mechanism. When you are doom scrolling, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, is highly activated.
Okay.
It operates under the assumption that you are actively scanning the horizon for immediate, life-threatening predators.
Wow. So you literally feel incapable of putting the phone down because your primitive brain is signaling that looking away means you'll miss the threat and die.
Right. The hypervigilance is the point. And sustaining that level of hypervigilance for hours every evening results in immense physical tension, chronic migraines, disrupted sleep, and this phenomenon neuroscientists are calling popcorn brain.
Oh, I read about popcorn brain and it immediately clicked for me.
It's so common now.
It's that sensation where your neural pathways are so accustomed to the hyperstimulation of the digital world that when you finally look up from the screen, the natural world just feels agonizingly slow.
Exactly. The dopamine baseline has been shifted so high.
Yeah. You can't even sit and watch a sunset without your brain twitching, basically demanding a notification just to feel a baseline level of normal.
And the tragedy of popcorn brain is that this inability to engage with this slow, physical world forces us back into digital spaces for social connection.
Right.
We substitute physical tribes with digital networks, which ironically creates our next profound crisis.
Which is structural isolation, the epidemic of loneliness.
It's
We have access to millions of people right in our pockets, yet we are historically isolated. And social comparison theory really unpacks the mechanics of this, right?
It does. Historically, we compared ourselves to a few dozen people in our immediate village. Now we are constantly comparing our messy, unfiltered reality to the highly curated highlight reels of millions of strangers.
And the human brain just lacks the capacity to process the idealized lives of millions of individuals as a normal baseline standard.
No, it can't handle it. This constant upward social comparison triggers severe depressive episodes, especially skyrocketing in young women aged 12 to 24.
It's devastating.
And it fosters an era of unbridled narcissism that corrodes our ability to form genuine, vulnerable relationships in the real world.
It's become a quantifiable health crisis. I mean, the WHO officially classifies loneliness as a global health threat now.
Yeah, the data is undeniable.
Like Julianne Holt-Lundsted's massive 2015 meta-analysis, it tracked over 3.4 million people and found that chronic isolation spikes early mortality by 29%.
Right, that's where that statistic of loneliness equating to smoking 15 cigarettes a day comes from.
It's just mind-blowing. And then there's a 2021 Harvard study showing that 61% of young adults, ages 18 to 34, report feeling serious loneliness.
It's because we've built a culture of hyper-independence that stigmatizes vulnerability and needing help.
But wait, if loneliness is this physiologically destructive, why did evolution even give us this feeling?
Yeah.
Why would biology design a feeling that actively kills us?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, evolutionary psychologist John Cacioppo spent his career studying this. His theory fundamentally shifts how we should view isolation.
Okay, how so?
He argued that loneliness is not a psychological defect. It is a biological alarm bell, identical in function to physical hunger or thirst.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so when your blood sugar drops, you feel the pain of hunger, which compels you to seek food to avoid starvation. When you are separated from your group, you feel the pain of loneliness, which is designed to compel you to return to the safety of the tribe to avoid being picked off by predators.
So the pain is actually a feature designed to drive us back to safety.
Exactly. But in the modern world, because we substitute our physical communities for these digital echo chambers, we never actually return to the tribe.
So the biological alarm bell just never shuts off.
Never. It rings continuously for years. And the chronic stress response of prolonged loneliness keeps the body flooded with inflammatory hormones.
And over time, that chronic inflammation physically damages the endothelial cells lining your arteries,
Yeah.
right? It increases blood pressure and permanently suppresses your immune system.
It's literally your body slowly failing because it believes it is constantly in a state of mortal peril.
We have this blaring alarm bell of pain, but instead of actually fixing the isolation, society tells us to just smile through it.
Right, the whole good vibes only mentality.
Exactly. It creates this incredibly damaging culture of toxic positivity. The danger of this I'm fine culture demands that we perform wellness, regardless of our actual internal state.
You ask someone how they're doing, and even if they are fundamentally collapsing under the weight of this auto-exploitation and loneliness, the only socially acceptable script is, I'm good, just really busy.
It's so true. And the research points out the massive physical toll of what psychologists call expressive suppression.
Right, which is the act of deliberately hiding your anger, sadness, or anxiety.
Yes. But it's critical to differentiate expressive suppression from cognitive reappraisal.
Oh, absolutely. Cognitive reappraisal is highly adaptive. It involves changing how you perceive a stressful event to lessen its emotional impact. You process the emotion, learn from it, and let it go.
But expressive suppression is simply burying the emotion alive while your body still fully experiences the physiological stress.
And the body absorbs that hidden stress. Clinical data demonstrates that constantly hiding your emotions spikes your systolic blood pressure.
But the mechanism that really shocked me is how this internalized stress affects the brain. How does buried anxiety literally lead to cognitive decline?
Well, when you suppress intense emotions, your systemic cortisol remains elevated for extended periods.
Okay.
And elevated cortisol disrupts your sleep architecture, specifically preventing you from reaching deep, slow-wave sleep.
And that's the restorative sleep.
Right. During slow-wave sleep, the brain's glymphatic system activates, basically flushing out cellular waste products accumulated during the day.
So when cortisol prevents this deep sleep, proteins like amyloid plaques are just left behind to accumulate in the brain tissue.
Exactly. And these are the exact plaques heavily associated with the early onset of Alzheimer's disease.
That is horrifying.
Yeah?
We are actively destroying our brain cells to maintain the illusion of being fine for our coworkers.
Yeah. And speaking of workplaces, researchers use a stark metaphor for this resilience trap. They liken remaining in a toxic work environment, like one characterized by bullying or chronic fear, just to prove your toughness, to literally holding your bare hand over a lit candle.
Oh, wow.
You are consciously choosing to let the fire melt your tissue just to prove to the room that you can endure the pain.
So we are poisoning our internal environment by trapping stress, But then our pursuit of modern efficiency means we're also physically poisoning the external environments we live and work in every day.
Right. Our modern conveniences are designed for efficiency, not human biology.
Take the sedentary nature of the modern knowledge worker. Sitting at a desk for 8 to 10 hours a day slows down your metabolism to the point where a 45-minute gym session in the evening literally cannot reverse the cellular damage.
The metabolic stagnation has already occurred.
Exactly. Or consider modern architecture. We build these tight envelope homes, super energy efficient, airtight spaces to save on heating and cooling.
They are brilliantly engineered for energy conservation, but they are absolutely disastrous for biological respiration.
Because they trap all the CO2, we continuously exhale. We sit in these sealed boxes, rarely opening a window, and slowly increase the ambient carbon dioxide levels.
We're giving ourselves systemic brain fog and fatigue from rebreathing our own recycled exhaust.
And then there's the food environment. So what does this all mean for something as simple as cooking? Because the mechanism behind cooking oils completely changed how I view my kitchen.
Oh, the photooxidation of lipids, that is a perfect example of a hidden, normalized environmental toxin.
I mean, you're telling me I'm pre-damaging my cooking oil just by leaving it on the counter.
Yeah, exactly.
I always thought keeping a clear glass bottle of cooking oil next to the stove was just convenient. But the research explains that exposing these unstable seed oils to ambient light or storing them in reactive metal containers like copper fundamentally alters their chemical structure.
Right, the light breaks down the lipid chains through photooxidation before the oil ever even touches a pan.
And when you introduce high heat to that pre-oxidized oil by frying with it, those degraded lipid chains break apart into toxic compounds called aldehydes.
And aldehydes are highly reactive. When consumed, they interact directly with your cellular DNA, promoting widespread inflammation and oxidative stress across your organs.
How much of our daily environment is just quietly attacking us?
When we synthesize the auto-exploitation of our work culture, the continuous amygdala hijacking by our devices, the chronic inflammation of structural loneliness, the neurological cost of suppressing our emotions, and the literal toxins in our buildings and food,
Yeah.
the conclusion is unavoidable. The modern world functions as a highly efficient incubator for human morbidity.
Okay, the existential dread is fully setting in for me right now. I need a way out of this matrix. How do we escape this if it's literally built into our homes, our jobs, and our phones?
Well, willpower is insufficient against this level of systemic engineering. We have to look at the neurobiology of change and understand how habits actually operate.
Right.
Every habit relies on a loop, a cue, a routine, and a reward.
Okay.
We fall into destructive patterns like doom scrolling or overworking because our rational prefrontal cortex is consistently overridden by the primitive brain through a mechanism known as delayed discounting.
Delayed discounting, meaning we inherently value immediate short-term relief over a massive long-term cost.
Exactly. The immediate, predictable hit of dopamine from checking a notification fundamentally outweighs the abstract, delayed knowledge that staring at a screen at midnight is destroying your sleep architecture.
Because the primitive brain always prioritizes the present moment.
Right. Therefore, you cannot simply decide to stop doom scrolling. You have to physically alter the environment to remove the cue entirely.
So if the phone sitting on the nightstand is the cue that initiates the routine of midnight doom scrolling, the solution isn't to just stare at the phone and try really hard not to touch it.
No, that never works.
The solution is to physically move the charger to the kitchen and buy a purely mechanical, old-school alarm clock for the bedroom.
Exactly. Friction is your greatest ally against bad habits. You have to make the destructive habit physically annoying to initiate.
That makes so much sense.
And beyond environmental tweaks, addressing the digital overload requires a structural reset. Cal Newport's concept of digital minimalism outlines a highly effective intervention here.
Yeah, the 30-day digital declutter. And it's not just taking a weekend off from social media to feel refreshed. It's a calculated deprivation.
Right. The 30 days of deprivation serves a neurobiological purpose. By stripping away all optional technologies, you force your downregulated dopamine receptors to reset to a natural baseline.
And you also force yourself to confront the immense discomfort of boredom
Right.
and the underlying anxiety you've been numbing.
Exactly. When the 30 days end, you don't just go back to your old habits. You slowly reintroduce technology under strict operational rules. You ensure each tool serves a deeply held core value, rather than allowing the tool to extract your attention for its own gain.
And while those dopamine receptors are resetting, we need to actively repair the brain tissue. The clinical data on mindfulness is incredibly promising here.
It really is.
It demonstrates that just 10 minutes of daily mindfulness practice induces neuroplasticity. It structurally alters the physical shape of the brain.
Over time, it literally shrinks the physical volume of the amygdala, reducing that hyperreactive fear response.
It restores the regulatory power of the prefrontal cortex. Furthermore, we must actively reclaim spaces of boredom and true auditory silence.
Letting the nervous system experience zero external input naturally lowers blood pressure, regulates heart rate variability, and provides the cognitive space required to heal the fragmented attention of popcorn brain.
It's like a glass of muddy water. You can't force the water to be clear by shaking it or yelling at it. You just have to let the glass sit perfectly still until the mud naturally settles to the bottom.
That is a beautiful way to look at it. And this raises an important question. That stillness forces a confrontation with reality. It asks you to consider whether your technologies, your environments, and your habits serve your core values, or if they simply exploit your attention economy.
That is the ultimate lens to view our routines through. As we wrap up this deep dive, the biggest realization for me is that the real threat to modern human survival isn't a sudden catastrophe.
No.
It's the slow, steady normalization of behaviors that treat humans like infinite, exploitable resources.
It is the boiling frog metaphor realized on a global societal scale. In an environment designed to extract your energy and attention until you collapse, true rebellion doesn't necessarily look like marching in the streets.
Right.
True rebellion today is accepting our physiological limits. It's valuing rest and having vulnerable, non-transactional conversations. It's choosing the friction of a face-to-face interaction over the hollow perfection of a curated digital image.
Rebellion is taking a nap and refusing to feel guilty about it. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today as you look at your own life. Think about the habit you are most proud of right now. The one that makes you feel the absolute most productive, the most informed, or the most perfectly optimized.
Okay.
Now ask yourself, is that habit genuinely serving your biological and emotional life? Or is it just another silent killer you've been expertly conditioned to love?
A vital question for anyone trying to survive the modern world.
Thank you so much for tuning in and unpacking these hidden mechanisms with us. We hope this gave you the tools to spot the invisible traps in your daily environment.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time, stay curious until our next deep dive on the MindWire podcast.